Have you ever wondered how the world got split in two after World War II? It wasn't with a big bang, but a slow, chilling freeze. This is the story of the Cold War in Europe, a 45-year standoff that shaped the world we live in today. After the devastation of World War II, two giants were left standing: the United States and the Soviet Union. They had fought on the same side, but their visions for the future were worlds apart. America championed capitalism and democracy, while the Soviets pushed for communism. This clash of ideas became the heart of the Cold War. In 1945, at the Yalta Conference, the Allies tried to map out a post-war world, but the trust was already gone. The Soviet Union, having liberated Eastern Europe from the Nazis, refused to allow free elections, creating a buffer zone of communist states. A year later, Winston Churchill gave this division a name that would stick: the Iron Curtain. He said it had descended across the continent, from the Baltic to the Adriatic, separating a free West from a Soviet-controlled East. Nowhere was this division more obvious than in Germany. The country was split into two: a democratic West Germany and a communist East Germany. The capital, Berlin, deep inside East German territory, was also divided. This city would become the ultimate symbol of the Cold War, a flashpoint of tension. The United States wasn't going to just stand by. In 1947, President Truman announced the Truman Doctrine, a policy of containment. America would support any nation threatened by a communist expansion, starting with Greece and Turkey. The first major crises erupted in 1948. The Soviets, hoping to force the Western powers out of Berlin, blockaded all land and water access to West Berlin. They wanted to starve the city into submission, but the West responded with a breathtaking feat of logistics: the Berlin airlift. For nearly a year, American and British planes flew round-the-clock missions, delivering food, fuel, and supplies to the 2 million people of West Berlin. It was a massive success and a huge propaganda victory for the West. The Soviets eventually lifted the blockade. This confrontation solidified the divide, leading to the creation of two opposing military alliances: NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, for the West in 1949, and the Warsaw Pact for the East a few years later. The lines were drawn. Throughout the 1950s and 60s, the Cold War wasn't just a political standoff. It was a struggle for the hearts and minds of a continent. But in the Eastern Bloc, any whisper of freedom was met with brutal force. In 1953, an uprising by East German workers was crushed by Soviet tanks. In 1956, Hungary erupted in a nationwide revolt, hoping for freedom. For a moment, it seemed they might succeed, but then the Soviet military rolled in, brutally suppressing the revolution. The world watched in horror, powerless to intervene directly, for fear of triggering a full-scale war. Then, in 1968, came the Prague Spring in Czechoslovakia. Leader Alexander Dubček tried to introduce socialism with a human face, bring in reforms and greater freedom. The people celebrated this newfound openness, but the Kremlin saw it as a threat to their control. In August, Warsaw Pact troops invaded, ending the brief dream of the Prague Spring and reinstalling a hardline communist government. These events sent a clear message: the Soviet Union would not tolerate dissent within its sphere of influence. The Iron Curtain wasn't just a political line. It was a prison wall. While Europe remained tense, the Cold War almost turned hot half a world away. In 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis brought the world to the very brink of nuclear annihilation. The discovery of Soviet nuclear missiles in Cuba, just 90 miles from Florida, led to a terrifying 13-day standoff between President Kennedy and Soviet Premier Khrushchev. For a moment, it seemed nuclear war was inevitable. Thankfully, diplomacy prevailed, but the crisis was a sobering reminder of how high the stakes were. By the 1970s, both sides were exhausted, and a period of détente, or a relaxing of tensions, began. But this thaw was short. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan in 1979 shattered the détente, reigniting the Cold War hostility. Then, in 1985, a new leader came to power in the Soviet Union, Mikhail Gorbachev. He knew the Soviet system was crumbling from within. He introduced two radical new policies: perestroika, to restructure the failing economy, and glasnost, a new policy of openness and transparency. Gorbachev hoped these reforms would save the Soviet Union, but instead, they opened the floodgates. Suddenly, people in Eastern Europe could see the cracks in the system. The spirit of rebellion, long suppressed, was rekindled. In 1989, change came as to dunces. Hungary opened its border with Austria, creating a tear in the Iron Curtain. Thousands of East Germans flocked through this gap to freedom. Protests erupted across Eastern Europe, and then, on the night of November 9th, 1989, came the moment no one thought they'd ever see. Facing massive protests, an East German official mistakenly announced that the borders were open. In a joyous, chaotic scene, thousands of East and West Berliners swarmed the Berlin Wall, climbing it, dancing on it, and tearing it down with their bare hands. The fall of the Berlin Wall was the symbolic end of the Cold War. The dominoes fell quickly after that. Communist regimes across Eastern Europe collapsed. In 1990, Germany was officially reunified, and by the end of 1991, the Soviet Union itself dissolved. The Cold War was over. This incredible story shows how even the most imposing walls can crumble in the face of the human desire for freedom. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey through one of history's most critical periods. If you found this fascinating, please hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the events that shaped our world. See you next time.